Welcome to the initial episode of the Obnoxious Honesty Podcast. I got a show for you today that's going to be a foundational episode, all right? And so, a foundational episode in terms of letting you know what I'm going to be doing and kind of setting the tone for the podcast overall. So, it's kind of like when you're in grade school, right? And you learning mathematics. So first you got to learn what the numbers are. Then after you learn what the numbers are, then you can learn how to use the numbers, adding and subtracting. But then after you learn adding and subtracting, you learn there's more ways to use the numbers, multiplication and division. Now each successive step builds upon the previous step. So in order for you to understand, the third step, multiplication and division, you got to be able to understand adding and subtracting. To be able to understand that, you got to understand, the numbers in general, where they came from, what the numbers are. So that type of process, that type of building upon, foundation, you lay the foundation, then you build upon it, and then you build upon that type of thing, that's going to be the idea of the first podcast. So it's going to be foundational. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the tone for the topic of the day. But first, I got to introduce you to my mindset and how I think about stuff and why I felt the need to create a podcast. What is the deal with me feeling like I need to, add some value, or that I can add value to you, the listener? I want to actually lay that out for you and give you what I think are good, well thought out, logical, important reasons for why and how I can add value by you listening to my podcast. So that's going to be the layout of the pod. I'm real excited for it, and I hope you'll be encouraged by it. Hope you'll be edified by it. Hope you'll be informed by it. But first, let's go ahead and start some intro music.
I'm trying to be great, and I'm on my way, way up. It's never too late, and I'm on my way. I'ma leave my mark, ready, set, go, ready, set, go, ready, set, go.
All right, so let's get into it. Let me explain to you why you're going to like my pod. All right. Now, sometimes I may come across as a little pompous, a little arrogant, a little prideful, a little bit of a jerk, depending on what I'm talking about and depending on what side you're on of what I'm talking about. So when I say obnoxious honesty, let me explain to you what obnoxious honesty is. Obnoxious honesty is somebody saying something that you really don't want to hear. You really don't like hearing what they're saying. And it's a struggle for you to actually listen to them all the way through. And depending on who you are and your personality, you may not listen all the way. Well, that's the type of honesty that I feel I give. Obnoxious honesty. And what I mean is, I'm going to be saying a lot of stuff that you probably don't like to hear or don't want to hear. You may think I'm out of place of saying it, or, I'm wrong, or I'm too harsh, or, I shouldn't say this, shouldn't say that. Now, everybody's got different opinions about stuff. So because everyone has different opinions, that means we'll have different tolerance levels for what we're willing to accept, what we're willing to listen to, what we're willing to consider, especially if it's on the opposite side of what we want or what we desire. So when I'm going to be breaking down situations, I'm going to be breaking down situations from multiple sides, different perspectives. So for the first, 5-10 minutes of me talking about something, you may be saying, oh, yeah, I agree. Amen. Oh, yeah. I'm with you. But then for the second 10 minutes, you'll be like, nah, I don't like that. Nah, I don't agree with that. No, he wrong. You might even cut me off, But the way I try to approach situations is I always try to look at things from multiple perspectives. I always try to see the other side's viewpoints, because I might not be considering something that could change my mind. I'm okay with having my mind change. I'm okay with having my opinions change based off of someone else's opinions or someone else's arguments, or, different facts or different information that may be brought to my attention that I'm not aware about in the first place. But there's a lot of people who don't feel that way. There's a lot of people who they look at a situation, they find out whatever information they want to find out, and then they move on with their decision of how they're gonna feel, and they don't consider what the other side is. They don't care about the other argument or want to hear it out, or even give it actual credence, when they do hear it. If you're that type of person, you are not gonna like this podcast. I'm just telling you right now. I want all the likes and subscribes I can get, but if you're unwilling to, listen to the other side and, of an argument, and being able to, consider things and try to use logic and reason for coming to conclusions about situations, as opposed to just, going off of what you feel strongly about, like, it's going to be tough for you to get through a lot of episodes. But hopefully, if I'm doing what I think is right and saying what I think is right based off of, facts and information, and, basing things off of not how I feel about stuff, because we all feel strongly about stuff. That's the point of having an opinion. Everybody feels strongly about something, a conclusion that they came up to. You got some subset of people that, a little bit more wishy-washy and maybe not as firm in what they believe in, depending upon, what the subject is or what the situation we talk about specifically is. But I'm not one of those people. I'm not that I'm talking down or talking bad about, those type of people. I'm just saying it's differences in personalities. My personality is pretty strong-willed. I'm the type of person, and my loved ones co-sign on this. When I make my mind up about something, I'm rolling with it. And the reason why is because I try to be a really good decision maker. So I try to consider a bunch of different things before I make a decision, before I make my mind up. I don't want to make my mind up and I haven't heard a good bit of evidence or enough of different situations so I can weigh, different viewpoints and thought processes. That I try to do that, beforehand. I try to gather information, look at what's going on, and try to see different perspectives and see, different people may agree, or disagree with the conclusion I come up with. So, once I do come up with a conclusion, man, I've vetted the process already. I've already been through, I've already put myself through, the different things to come to the conclusion that I come to. So that's why I'm so strongly opinionated in the opinions that I do have, because I feel like I've done the research on the backhand, before I, come up with a conclusion, or before I make a decision on, what side I stand on something. So, that's a little bit of background about my personality. And I feel that's important moving on as you listen to the pod. I feel like you're going to want to be able to understand like how I'm coming up with stuff and how I'm, approaching things. So I wanted to put that out there. I wanted to put that out there first, in terms of setting the groundwork, setting the foundation. What is obnoxious honesty? That title, I didn't come up with that title. I gotta, send love, send a shout out to my brother, Laren, who passed in 2016. He actually came up with that name. He's the first person I ever heard, putting those two words together, obnoxious honesty. And so he actually was coming out with a video series before he passed in 2016. And so he didn't, get the finish putting out everything. But I remember hearing that title for the first time when he brought it out. I was like, I kind of like that. So I wanted to definitely make mention of him and give honor where it's due, give credit where it's due for the name of the pod. So that's my little intro. All right, that's my little intro to obnoxious honesty. So that's the first part of what I consider to be my credentials of being a good problem solver and mediator based off of studying the human, behaviors and thought processes and patterns of living and lifestyles, those type of things that go into psychology. The second part is intentional learning, the fact that I'm an intentional learner. I think it's safe to say we can pretty much come to an agreement that two people can go through a situation, and if one person goes through that situation just without any really purpose or intent, and they just go through the situation, versus the other person that goes through the situation with intentional purpose and learning, the person that went through that situation with the intent and purpose of learning is going to learn more from going through that situation than the other person who wasn't purposeful and intent with learning. When I think about that, the first thing that really comes to mind is Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality that he talked about a lot. Now, that really focused thought process and learning that comes from that, and the relationship to what the Mamba mentality was that Kobe talked about, was the fact that you have to do everything in your power, give whatever effort you can to gain knowledge, gain experiences, the resources that are available to you. You have to try to apply all of those things in order to be the absolute best that you can in a particular area or certain subject. The word diligence means giving 100% of your effort 100% of the time. And that's really the foundation of what the Mamba mentality is and what Kobe used to talk about, like giving diligence. That's a term that, it's not really popularly used. You don't really hear the word diligence a whole lot of times, but that's what the mindset is. That's kind of like a visual, giving 100% effort 100% of the time, doing everything you can, everything in your power to be the best you can be at a certain situation. So when you give your best at something, you're more likely to learn than when you don't give your best at something. Now, there's a video that went around on YouTube sometime last year in 2021 of James Harden. If you don't know who James Harden is, he's one of the best basketball players ever. He's like one of the top 100 players to ever play in the NBA. He's a real good player, right? So he was in the gym with some high school kids. Now, the video cuts on, and James is talking to them, and he asked them how long they've been in the gym. And the kids are like an hour and a half. And James is like, y'all not even sweating. Like, how you been in the gym working for an hour and a half and you ain't sweating? And one of the kids was like, well, I don't sweat. And James was like, you better make yourself sweat. How you going through the motions? Y'all just not really doing anything, going through the motions of saying you've been in the gym for an hour. If you're not really working on stuff, James started talking about how he goes through practice with game moves, and he's like, I'm practicing in practice how I'm gonna do it in a game. He's like, basically, he didn't word it exactly like this, but what he was saying was, the point he was trying to get them to understand is that you got to be purposeful and intentional when you're going through something. That's the only way you're going to get better at it. That's the only way you're going to learn. And that's the only way it's going to actually bring value to you. That's the point that he was trying to get to them. The fact that those kids was in the gym, quote unquote, working on their game and practicing basketball for an hour and a half and not sweat. Like, that don't even make sense, man. Like, that's impossible. So that's the point that James is trying to get to them. But that goes on to my overall point of how purposeful and intentionally going through a situation or experience, you're more likely to learn, and you have a greater retention rate of learning through the situation. With that in mind, let me talk about my unique perspective based off of my experiences and my background in my life that make me an intentional kinesthetic learner, which we've already covered. Both of those things individually give a greater, knowledge and understanding of a situation. So those type of things in my background as a problem solver and a mediator with a focus on understanding people and studying people and their behaviors, those combination of things in my background is what I'm about to kind of fill you in on now. So check it. I got three different levels of my background that all pertain to studying people, their mindset, and their behaviors. So them three different levels. One is in college in my academic learning. The second area is my background and my business uh, career as a manager in different roles and different situations. And then the third area is my role as a preacher or evangelist, studying the Bible with a bunch of different people in different ways. So I got three different parts of my background in three different areas that have all helped me have this overall combination of learning people in different areas in different ways, which makes it more versatile, which gives me a more mature level of learning and understanding people that a lot of other people don't have. So let me get into it. In terms of college and my academic background and study, and I took some psychology classes in college, but I was a business management major with a minor in econ. So there's a relationship that a lot of people may not be able to recognize or understand that gives intention to the learning of psychology within the business and economics style of learning. So what I mean by that is in my business management classes and looking at business law and looking at business ethics and studying econ and the different things that go into world economies, there's a relationship with psychology because you're studying historical facts and historical accounts of people and the things that they did and why they did them that affected the different world economies at different situations. And then also in terms of management, you're looking at business ethics and you're studying different methods of management that all pertain to studying people in psychology because management is not about the product, management is about the people. All right, when you're a manager, it doesn't really matter what product you're selling. It matters how you're managing the people to get them to perform different tasks that you need them to perform. That's why if you look around the business world, you'll see, CEO from one company getting hired because there's track record in another company, which, a lot of times it's not their competitor in the same industry. It's from a different industry. And, you'll see one person getting hired in one industry as a CEO for a company that they have experience in a whole nother industry. And you may think, well, why would they hire them? Well, you see that oftentimes because business people understand management is not about the product, it's about the people. So there is a focus on studying people and learning and understanding people, how they think, and that influences how they behave. So as a manager, you're trying to get people to do certain things. You're trying to get them to work a certain way, and oftentimes it's working at a higher level than they want to work at. So as a manager, you have this constant battle between you, the manager, with your expectations and your desires for a performance versus the employee who they have their specific level that they are comfortable with wanting to work at and the effort they're willing to give. So it's like a constant mediation session, subconsciously a lot of times, that you're going through trying to get these different employees to work at a level high enough to represent you as a manager. Because as a manager, what you're trying to do is if there's different, parts of the equation in terms of the job that you're trying to get done, there's different parts of the job, there's different roles that people have to play. And as a manager, you understand each of the different roles and you understand how all those roles go together into one to get the product out to the customer or be able to come to whatever you're trying to get to. A lot of times the individual employees, they only get their part of the equation and they don't care about the other sides of the equation. You have to care and understand about each of those sides of the equation. So in doing that, you have to get each of the people to do what you would do if you were in that role. So if there's three different roles in this business, the manager is trying to get each of the three employees to do the job at a level as if they, the manager, was the one doing it. So that is a constant battle that managers face all the time. That, you may not think about it, that is psychology. That's studying people, that's studying behavior. You're probably familiar with the phrase, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. As an employee, you, at the top of your head, you could probably think of a manager that you liked more than others, right? Who your favorite manager that you've worked for. It's usually because that person, that manager, was relatable to you. They showed that they actually, cared about you. So whether or not they're good at the particular job that they're doing in terms of performance of the job itself, with like getting a product out to a customer, if that's the, business, area that you're in, you a lot of times don't even care about that. You care more about your relationship with them and the manager, and that they were relatable to you. They seem like they cared about you, not just you as a worker, but you as a person. All of that goes into management. All that goes into psychology. So I was understanding and studying those things from a business perspective in different business classes through the years, while simultaneously living that out and working in different manager roles. So in my 16 years as a manager, I've worked for three different companies in two completely different industries, and I've worked in four different levels of management, four different management roles. So I have all of these different trainings from not just the academic side, but in the actual business world, in the real world situations that I've gone through, that have helped me to look at the same thing from so many different perspectives. So first, my personality just is the type that I like to look at things from different perspectives. But added on to that, I've actually, because of the different management roles that I have worked in, I've been forced to learn, because I've been taught in different ways at different roles, that you're responsible for different things. So there's so many perspectives, so many different perspectives that I have had to commit to memory and commit to my learning, that I have this conglomerate of information and experiences that help me to teach others to have that same thing. But some personalities, I can do all teaching in the world, and they're still just not going to get it, or maybe they're just not interested in that subject matter or whatever. So that is something that applies to my unique perspective that I think is real important. And then the third portion of my experiences in psychology and studying people and studying behaviors is me being a preacher or an evangelist for the last 12 years. So my 16 years of management, also got 12 years of being a preacher and evangelist, which is, not just teaching the Bible, but studying people. Because when I'm studying the Bible with a person, I have to get to know the person. I have to know stuff about the person and their background, so that I can know how to effectively teach them the Bible. There's certain methods and certain ways to teach people who are at different levels of understanding and different levels in their life, in terms of what they're going through in their life, may make them more susceptible to learn the Bible in a specific way. So as a preacher and evangelist, I've had to learn and do that, because I've studied with a bunch of people through the years, and I've learned a bunch of different ways to be able to deal with people and teach people in those settings. So I got three different settings of my life, as a student, as a manager, and as an evangelist, that those three different ways I have always been able to have a foundation of psychology, studying people, their mindset, and studying their behaviors, because there's that constant connection of, you have to understand how someone thinks and able to understand why they're doing what they're doing. Because a lot of times I face with a situation where I can't have them to continue exhibiting the behaviors that they're continuing. Whether that's teaching someone the Bible with a certain lifestyles that they may have, and trying to get them to understand, well, and this isn't even really about me, right? I'm trying to teach you what the Bible says about this particular, lifestyles and the thought processes and the way you're living life. So your behaviors are this,
But, if you're interested in studying the Bible, you want to know what the Bible says about your behaviors needing to be this, which is opposite or different from what you're doing. So in that situation and in that aspect, I have that background. And then once again, professionally as a manager in business, I have that same thing in a completely different setting. So in the setting of being a manager and having workers under me, they have a specific level and place that they want to be at as a worker with the behaviors that they're exhibiting, and I have to get them to be at a different level. So I have to understand their mind, understand their thinking, study that, and able to be able to get them to change their behaviors. So in order to get someone to change their behaviors, you got to first understand their mindset and how they think and be able to get them to think differently. I've heard that explained one time on one of my older brothers in Christ. He was talking about how to train children and teach children. Now he at the time, he still got three kids, but his kids that he raised were all older than me. So he's got three different kids that he raised, all older than me. They had all in turn had kids in different ages, and they all were. When you look at their lives, they were, good, smart, stable people, not criminals, not alcoholics, not, unfaithful to their spouses or nothing like that. So you looked at all those different things in their lives. Those are the type of adults that I would like to raise. So this older brother who I was talking to, he one of the things he said about parenting is you gotta change their want tos. Change their desires, why they want to do certain things, and then that will change their behavior. The only way to do that is to understand why they're thinking the way they're thinking and try to help them to think about things a different way. So when you get people to think about things a different way, then they will in turn do things a different way. That relates to earlier what I was talking about with intentional learning. So changing people's mindset to get them to change their behavior, that relates to intentional learning because that's the only way you're going to be able to go through situation, learn from it so that you can change your behavior and do things a different way by understanding that if you kept doing the same things the same ways, you wouldn't get different results. So I liken it to a person that's dating different people, but they're the same type of people. Like for example, one of my workers, he's in a bike club, a motorcycle club, right? And there's a certain type of people, certain type of guys that are in a motorcycle club, and there's a certain type of women that tend to hang around the guys in the motorcycle club. So he told me a story about there's this particular woman. She's known for dating multiple guys in the bike club for different periods of time. But she's never, had a really long, consistent, serious relationship, with any of them. But if you think about things from her perspective, as a woman who, interested in guys and trying to settle down, trying to get married or something like that, but the same type of people she's dating, they may not have that same type of mindset. Depending on their different like ages, they might have just have fun mindset. I'm sure you probably know somebody you could think of off the top of your head. They generally date a certain type of people. It may not be everybody in a bike club, but it may be a certain type of people that they tend to be attracted to, that they kind of have things in common with. Maybe you have a friend that goes to the gym and they consistently meet people at the gym and they tend to, strike up relationships there. Maybe it's somebody that they like to, meet people at bars or clubs and they tend to date people from there or whatever kind of setting or whatever situation. But the people that tend to date a certain type of person, but they a lot of times will run into the same type of roadblocks and the same type of issues that does not lead the relationship to be sustainable long term in terms of marriage and kids and stability and being monogamous and consistent and committed to each other. one of the underlying issues with this is that people tend to go through those type of situations, go through those type of relationships without purposeful and intentional learning. And so when they're going through a situation with somebody and, they are, let's say they're cheated on, or let's say they're just not really treated with the full respect that they feel they deserve. If that's like a consistent refrain in multiple relationships, when the people you're dating have kind of similar backgrounds or similar interests, then that's like you going through those relationships and going through the situations without learning, like, well, maybe I should try something different. But if you're just going through a situation, without, learning things intentionally and having that purpose in your actions, then you're just going to keep making the same mistakes over and over. So from the outside looking in, your friends or whatever, or your family members will be looking at you like, man, here they go, with this type of person, and it's probably going to end this type of way. And a lot of times that's like exactly how things turn out. So then, that's one of the reasons that intentional learning is so important, and that's how that relates to change behavior, which also comes from a change mindset. So there's connections working all around that are really applicable to the mindset and how we can think about things different ways to do things differently. But it's all going together. Another aspect of my problem solving and mediation experiences that have, caused me to grow in that area is I've had to come up with problem solving methods and answers on the fly in many different areas. So as a manager, first of all, a lot of your job is putting out fires. We like to use that term. How was the day? Oh, I had to put out a lot of fires. Which basically means, kind of like that old whack-a-mole game where, something pops up here, you hit it, and then it pops up another way and you hit it. It's like that when you at work, where this employee has this problem, so you got to go help them out. And then another employee was like, "Hey, can you help me with something?" And you help them out. And next thing you know, it's been 20 different scenarios in a 10, 12 hour, 16-hour workday, and you put out a lot of fires. What that means is you've done a lot of different things on the fly, like you weren't prepared to handle that particular situation and offer a solution to that particular area until it was presented to you immediately. So what that does is it forces you to come up with good, smart, well thought out ideas quickly. And so you doing that over and over will help you even more. So, I got that experience there. But then another aspect that I have that is from my being a evangelist. One of the things that the church I'm part of did was a live radio program where people would call in, ask Bible questions, and we would be able to give them their Bible answers, book, chapter, and verse. So doing that for 12 years, I had to, when someone asked a question, I immediately first try to think back to just my overall Bible knowledge of what I had, and then I might just, try to figure out, okay, how do I search the answer to what they're looking for if I don't know it off the top of my head? Is there certain keywords that I need to be able to search in my computer program? Is there a certain context or a certain verse that I have memorized, and I can try to think about the context in and around that verse that may be offering them the answer to the question that they have? So I had to think with those scenarios, for, like I said, 12 years and having that. So as a manager and as an evangelist, I've been in those two completely different scenarios of immediately and quickly coming up with solutions to a situation or answers to a problem and drawing off of that. So those two very different experiences with the same type of foundational thought of, solving a problem. And then, of course, mediation, being able to bring two people or two opposite sides together. There's a bunch of times where I can remember, like, you think about a irate customer or someone who's mad about a situation that happened, and they ask to speak to the manager. So once again, on the fly, I come up to the situation, and I'm immediately studying the situation. I'm studying the people involved and figuring out what's going on. So, the employee, when I come up there, they tell me, hey, this customer's mad at so and so, whatever. The customer's like, yeah, well, this, and you may hear different types of things that each of them are saying, and you're painting a full picture. So you got to take what one person say as a piece of the puzzle. Got to take the other person, what they say as a piece of the puzzle, and then if there's any other aspects of the scenario situation, you got to join that together as a piece of the puzzle as well. So maybe there's some type of historical background of the situation that will help you understand, in the past when this type of situation has happened, this has been the problem. So maybe that's the same problem that's being caused now, why this customer is mad. But I'll also have in the same part of my mind, I'm thinking about that and I'm trying to figure out the problem on the fly, figure out a solution on the fly. And if the customer's just, being belligerent and they're just not really being helpful or trying to diffuse the situation, then I'm also thinking, all right, I got to get this person out the store immediately. Like as fast as possible, I'm trying to diffuse the situation. And if the person is not trying to be able to calm down, then I gotta just get them what they want so they can walk out the door and just have that energy gone, right? So those type of things is also constantly going through my mind. Once again, this is decision making on the fly, coming up with these ideas. So I keep trying to, just hammer home the point. There's been a bunch of different areas of my life and a bunch of different scenarios in different settings where the same foundational principles have been applied. I have to figure out why people are thinking the way they're thinking, why they're doing the things that they do. And in many situations, I have to understand those so that I can try to figure out ways to get them to think differently so that they will in turn act differently. I just got a bunch of different scenarios about that. So I hope that's a good summary. I hope that I've, maybe convinced you to, come to the conclusion that, well, yeah, he does have some, some viable points and some good experiences that have overall combined to give a unique perspective on problem solving and mediation, which then in turn will, on that individual level, connect to a higher level and more overall way of being able to help people to change behavior and once again just to grow and be better as people. This idea of moving forward, let me relate that back to basketball again. I'm a big NBA fan, big basketball fan, so a lot of my examples that I use, I attribute that to thought processes that I've learned just by listening and watching basketball. But anyway, back in 2020 when LeBron passed Kobe on the all-time scoring list, Kobe tweeted something and he mentioned, to LeBron, he's like, keep moving the game forward. And what he meant by that is like LeBron right now has this, accumulation of knowledge and experiences that he's been through that he has a responsibility to pass that knowledge on to the next generation. Kobe said that because he felt the same way. Like he felt like, Michael Jordan did the same thing to him. Like, not just Michael Jordan, but others. So you have mentors and people that you listen to that they have a conglomerate or a wealth of knowledge and they pass some of that knowledge from you and you get different knowledge from others. So the knowledge and experiences that you have is a accumulation of knowledge you've gotten from various other people who have gotten their knowledge from various other people and their life experiences. So what that does is it continues to be passed down, this knowledge, but with each successive generation of people, or with each successive person that the knowledge is passed around, they then gain a certain amount. So basically, it's like there's in the decade of the 1950s, there's a certain amount of knowledge that people had on how to do a particular thing, right? Let's say for example, it's going back to basketball. It's a certain way that you play basketball in 1950s. So then when the 60s come, people take how you played in the 50s, but then they add to it. They add a few things. And so it's like that with every generation, every decade. So in the 70s, they add more. In the 80s, they add more. So it's like you have this information previously that's available to you. You take that information, learn what you can learn, and then you add to it, and then you pass it on. So that was like the background of that tweet that Kobe sent LeBron, and that is the mindset, or that the underlying principle is the idea of gaining a certain amount of knowledge, no matter the situation. Like I use basketball as an example, but in anything, you gain a certain amount of knowledge and life experiences. Just whoever you are, whatever situation or position you're in life, you are a accumulation of all of your life experiences that you've been through and all of the knowledge that you have gained from both the experiences you've been through as well as all the people that you've learned from in different areas and the things that you've learned from them. So then your accumulation of knowledge looks a certain way. Your accumulation of knowledge and experiences looks a certain way. And so you have that, and that goes into a part of who you are. So as you have the responsibility to help teach others, specifically younger people, but a lot of times, still adults, people your age, you have that responsibility to help encourage and influence and educate and teach others moving forward so that they can continue to do that same thing. You accumulate knowledge and experiences, you learn from mistakes and bad decisions, and then you pass that information on with the hope that the person that you pass it on, whether it be someone your same age group or someone younger, a lot of times, the hope is they take the knowledge that you have given them and they in turn use it so that they can be better and that they don't make those same mistakes and bad decisions, and they can understand context behind life from a bigger picture. So it's not just about going through life willy-nilly and not learning something and just allowing situations to happen. I heard somebody say one time, there's three types of people in this world. Uh, People that watch things happen, people that make things happen, and people that wonder, what happened? So it's those three different types of people. You watch things happen, other people make things happen, and then other group of people, they're just wondering what happened. So that type of thing is what I would say is the overall thought of my pod that I really want people to be able to hammer home and understand. A lot of people don't really think about it that deep, right? There's certain parts of their life they think about that deep. But overall, in terms of being intentional in passing on knowledge and information to others that will be helpful to them, and not doing it from a position of thinking you're so much smarter or so much better than, that's not about it. That's not the motive behind it. The motive behind it, the intent behind it, is so that just we can be better, so that we can help people and help others. So as you listen to the pod and I cover different topics and different subjects, some of the things you'll like to hear, some of the things you won't like to hear. My intent is not just to, be a hot take person and to make people mad and say all kind of outlandish and crazy things. However, I know that from the perspective that I'm going to come from, depending upon what topic I'm talking about, some people are going to take that in a negative way or have a negative context or think that I meant it with a negative connotation. And that's really not the case. My overall point is I try to help people to think about stuff differently. That's it. Because once again, when you think about stuff differently, then you're more likely to do stuff differently. And as we go about our lives in our everyday world and we see all the division and we see all the problems that's going on, in your what I call circle of influence, the people that you come in contact with on a consistent basis, right? I call that circle of influence. So in your circle of influence, the people that you affect, if you have a different mindset in trying to understand people from different perspectives and understand the situation from different perspectives, then that can help you be able to handle stuff better, and you can in turn be able to affect other people to handle stuff better, because one-on-one is the strongest way that you can influence somebody. You can have a professor teaching a class of 30, and every one of the 30 is learning the same, they're hearing the same information presented at the exact same time in the exact same way. And there still can be 30 different pieces of information, 30 different ways those people go about with those pieces of information. But if those same 30 people then have that sit down one-on-one with that same professor, and that professor can learn that these different people, like out of the 30, let's say 10 people, learn this particular way, 10 people learn the second way, and 10 people learn the third way, and you can sit down and you can discuss and help people one-on-one in their way of learning with their backgrounds, and you understand that, man, you're going to have a better outcome moving forward than you would had you not been one-on-one with the situation or with the teaching or the training. So I hope you enjoyed the thoughts and the background that I gave you. Once again, this is the foundational part, right? This is the first episode. All I tried to do today was set the foundation for how the rest of the pod is going to be, because I think that's really important. Because once again, as I start covering topics and subjects and having stuff to say about them, I don't call it pod Obnoxious honesty for no reason, right? It's gonna be some stuff you hear and you'll be like, man, nah, I can't rock with I can't rock with that. But once again, I'm saying stuff with the intent of trying to help people just think about things a different way. Broaden your perspectives, because that's when true growth and learning individually and collectively is actually going to happen. Being open to listen to the other side, understand why the other side is on the other side, and then figuring out, like, just because they're on the other side doesn't mean I can't collaborate with them. Doesn't mean I don't want to communicate with them. They can be on the other side and I can be on this side, and we can still be able to come together, reach some kind of common ground or some kind of middle ground. That's just a life skill that'll help you in every area of your life. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. Please go ahead and like and subscribe to the YouTube page. Appreciate everything. Man, listen, if you want to talk about something on the future pod, just hit my email, obnoxioushonestypodcast@gmail.com. And then the subject line, if you just got a comment, just leave a comment. Or you can, go ahead and comment on the video. That's cool. But if you want to send an email, if it's something that subject matter you want to talk about, just in the subject line in the email, just put whatever topic that you want to discuss. And then in the body of the email, just kind of, fill me in, give me a little background on similarly what I did to you today in this episode. In the email, just give me a little background of what type of experiences that you've had and what type of ways that you've learned that helps you in this particular area or subject matter that you want to talk about on the pod. So just give me a little bit of background. Just like I did to y'all, I gave y'all a little bit of background on why I feel like I am going to be able to bring value to the pod. So if you're interested in coming in the pod and talk about a subject or a situation, once again, go ahead, hit the email, obnoxioushonestypodcast@gmail.com. And then in the subject line, just put whatever the subject or topic you want to talk about. And then give me a short, low, paragraph or something like that describing, some of your experiences and backgrounds. And, we'll collaborate. We'll click up and we'll get you on the pod. So until next time, I appreciate you. I love you. Grace and peace. I'm out.